Hey there, it's Tom here, and today we're talking about the Cereus Jamacaru, more commonly known as the Cuddly Cactus. Right, so the Cuddly Cactus. It's a very interesting houseplant. It it is actually a cactus, despite what people might tell you. It is a cactus. It just happens to be cuddly, which means that you can give it a hug without having to worry about the spines and thorns that are on most cacti. The reason for that is because there aren't where there should be the spines, there are none. Technically, there are very very small ones, which I will show you. And if you run your finger along the new growth specifically, you can feel them, but they're not going to do anything to you. But they are still there. There's a little, they kind of grip your skin ever so slightly, but they're fine. They're not going to cause any harm. It's a really interesting plant. It has a nice aesthetic. It's got the scalloped edges, and it's very upright, and it's kind of chunky. It's a very chunky kind of looking plant. So I get why people like them as houseplants, especially if you are a bit nervous or a bit worried about traditional cacti with their spines. So this is a great alternative. I would say, however, they're a little bit like a fad maybe, or craze, because you'll see these and people will be put off by them because they don't think they're real plants, or they don't think that they're real cacti, or they've been bred specifically for this purpose. They have obviously been propagated in mass for that purpose because it's a marketing name, Cuddly Cactus. Their real name, as I mentioned earlier, is Cereus Jamacaru. I had to remember that then. But it's obviously not something that most people would actually use. Cuddly Cactus is going to be much more memorable. So yeah, but actually it is actually a naturally occurring plant. It just happens to be that it's been taken from the wild and cultivated en masse to become a kind of semi sort of popular houseplant. It could become a lot more widespread. I don't know. I'm not sure what people think of it. It's not rare, but I would say it's uncommon, potentially. You might say, I've seen this everywhere, Tom. Everywhere I go, I see one of these, and that's definitely possible. But it's kind of new. It's kind of we're at that kind of period of time where it's a new houseplant. So what becomes of it is anyone's guess. Whether or not it becomes mainstream and very, very popular, or if it just disappears and we never hear about it again. But for now, this is a care video to tell you how to look after it and what to do. So let's get started. The light needs for this plant are quite straightforward. It needs as much light as you can give it. So a place in full sun, the sunniest spot in your home will be absolutely perfect here. It is, by all accounts, it is a cacti. So if you think of how you would raise or grow a normal cacti, it's the same principle here. The name might make you think otherwise. Just, it's not a baby. Don't baby this plant. Don't fuss it. It is sturdy. It's hardy. It's tough. So full sun. It wants full sun. If you don't give it full sun, which I did not do, I fell into that trap. I kind of thought it was, oh no, you need to treat it carefully. It can't cope with too much. No, 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 no. If you do that and you make my mistake, you're going to get the new growth is going to be thinner. It needs as much sun as possible. It really does. If you notice that the new growth coming out of the plant, which we'll get onto a bit later on, if it's quite skinny, quite thin compared to the rest of the plant, it's most likely not getting enough light. That would be a problem there. So that gives you a rough guide as to what it needs. But it does need lots of sun, so as much as possible. If you cannot provide that, then the brightest possible spot you have in your home is what you need to give. It's not a low light plant. It's not a medium light plant. It needs as much light as possible. So try and find somewhere really bright to give it the best chance of looking great for you and performing. So watering is very straightforward. It's like pretty much any cacti you might have owned before. And if you haven't owned one, here's what you do. You water it well, and then you don't water it again until it has dried out completely, until the potting mix has dried out completely. If you just don't need to keep it wet or moist, just let it dry out. It's fine. It can cope with some underwatering, and it can not cope with overwatering. Okay, that sounds really weird, but hopefully you get what I mean. So underwatering is okay. Overwatering, absolutely not. Do not overwater these plants. When you underwater it, if you do underwater it for a long period of time, you might notice they're quite plump. I'll see if I got any photos I can show you, but the ridges, they're quite plump. There's quite a lot going on. If you underwater it for a very long period of time, so you have not watered it for a long period, they shrink. They get very, very skinny. It's okay. The plant can come back. Don't worry about it. Give it a good water. It takes a while. It's not instantaneous, not quick as some of the other house plants like peace lilies or Fittonia, anything like that. It does take a little while for it to plump back up. You're talking a few days, maybe up to a week if it's really severe, but it will come back. So just don't worry about that. But it does take a bit of time. So yeah, underwaterings can be tolerated. Overwatering, absolutely not. And the golden rule, as I said before, is water it well, and then don't water it again until it has completely dried out. These are warm, loving plants. If you listen to the earlier part of my video where I told you to put in a bright, sunny location, and you've done that, those locations are going to be naturally warmed by the sun. So you're already meeting that goal without doing anything else. They don't want to be in a cold location. They don't want to be in a medium temperature location. They want to be warm. They want to be basking. Think of it like that. So because of that reason, that affects their growth. Now, I think I'm going to talk about speed of growth now, just because it makes sense. So these plants only grow for a very short period of time during the year. I say that, it seems like a long period of time. They can grow for around 3 months, and then they kind of go dormant or go into a resting state. It's not true dormancy. They haven't shut down as such, but they're not going to grow all year round. And they probably have quite a short period of a growing season, I suppose, and that tends to be late spring and summer. And then as soon as you start to get a little bit colder, as soon as the light starts to fade a little bit, the nights start drawing in ever so slightly, the growth stops. So you'll get a massive load of growth very, very quick. They go fast. You'll get a lot coming out, and then it just stops and you don't get anything else. So if your plant's not growing all year round, that's probably normal. It's not anything to be concerned about. Right, let's take a look at repotting and potting mix. So this is a succulent, and if you watched some of my videos before, you may know what I'm about to say here, but succulents tend to be quite sensitive to the available space for their roots. By that, what I mean is once the roots have filled the pot and there's nowhere else for them to grow, they don't grow anymore above the soil. They do not produce any more green growth. The roots it's almost like they don't feel confident. They feel worried that they will not be able to support what they have. They will not be able to support more growth, so they stop. Which means that these plants can become static or dormant for long periods of time. This one in particular did nothing for a year, and I didn't understand why. It's my mistake. I should have been more observant. I thought, why is it not growing? I pulled it out of its container and I saw this, and I knew immediately. I knew what had gone wrong. You do need to repot them if you want them to grow. If you don't want your plants to grow, if you're happy with the size of it, if you think it looks cute as it is and you don't want it to grow bigger, or you just don't have the space for a bigger plant, then you can leave it in the same container for many years and it's fine. Just make sure you do feed it occasionally just to be safe. But yes, you don't need to repot them if you don't want it to grow. But if you do want to grow, which I imagine a lot of owners would, then you do need to be observant and of the roots. And once they fill the container, you do need to put it into a bigger pot. As for the potting mix you can use, it is going to be something like a succulent mix, or you can probably use regular potting soil, compost. But if you use one of those, you're probably going to have to add in some gravel or perlite, or just something to make it a little bit more free draining. They are not as susceptible to overwatering as some succulents. They will just rot, some of them, but these are a little bit stronger with that, but they will still suffer if they're overwatered. So that gravel, that perlite just gives you that extra bit of security just to make sure. So do add a little bit in. You don't want to lose these plants. You could spend years growing them to a good size, and you don't want them just to rot overnight and be done with, basically. However, that leads us into propagation. So you probably won't want to propagate these plants normally, but if something goes wrong, if you start to notice it's going mushy and it's starting to rot away, you may be able to propagate the top section if it's still okay. So let's assume, or maybe your plant's just too big and you just want to take a bit off the top and you do want to propagate it. Cool, fine. So to propagate, all you want to do is essentially just cut the stem, nice even cut, and then you just leave it to dry for a few days. It needs to callus over, and then you can just plonk it into a potting mix similar to what it was growing in already. You may not too deep, just enough to keep it anchored rather than tipping out, and all being well, new roots should start to form underneath, and that's usually how you propagate these plants. Okay, so we're nearing the end of the video, and at this point I normally cover off some problems that you might come across. Generally speaking though, this is pretty easy going. You probably won't have many issues. We've talked about a few of them already, but I'll quickly recap them now. So we've got the mushy issue. If the stems are going mushy, it's almost certainly going to be root rot and overwatering. All you can do is take cuttings. Once it sets in, there's not really much you can do, unfortunately. With these type of plants, these succulents are very difficult to rescue. If it's severe, if there's significant mushy stems, you're not going to have, there's not very much chance of that coming back, unfortunately. Thin, skinny growth is usually caused by not enough light, so you need to put it in a brighter location. And no growth is usually caused by, well, actually it could be caused by two things. One, again, not enough light if it's particularly dark or cold, but also if the container is too small, so you may need to repot it. Okay, so that is it for the Cuddly Cactus. Thank you for watching my video. Any questions or comments or anything as usual, please do reach out to me. I love hearing from you. I like hearing how you're growing your plants and what you're doing with them. It's good. I like it. I like connecting with you guys. So do more of the same, please. Thank you. And that's it. So thank you again for your time, and thank you for watching my video today. And I will hopefully see you in the next video.